Finance and Operations Committee to order. The committee would like to welcome the audience. Viewers may watch live board committee meetings online at tcaps.net/board. Recording meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. The committee has set aside this time for public comment. Julie, do we have any public comment? All right. So seeing none, that is the end of public comment. Under procedural items, we're at the approval of the draft committee meeting minutes from the prior meeting. Are there any changes to the prior meeting minutes?
No, I just have one small suggestion. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did watch it a couple times. And when we were discussing the next year's school budget, this line here, noting that the Administration Board of Education will explore potential budget reductions due to decreased funding in specific categorical areas and reduction in student enrollment. I think what we were discussing was the scenarios in which we need to balance next year's school budget and some assumptions being made. One of those assumptions was that we wouldn't lose any kids, and that the other assumption was that we were going to get the other half, the $1 million from the safety and mental health. So I guess my recommendation was maybe to just, put uncertainties or challenges regarding categorical areas and student enrollment.
It was meant to reflect the reductions we got this year.
But to balance the status for next school year?
Yeah, because if we maintain that reduction, then with our increases for staff, we would be over budget if we maintain status quo. So we can change the verbiage, but it was meant to reflect, we got a reduction this year. If we don't get an increase next year, which the budget is unknown, then we would be making reductions.
Right. So I guess, so just so I'm clear, so when, I love that we're scenario planning for the budget next year and we're making certain assumptions, because there's lots of factors, right? Lots of unknowns. But during the meeting, those assumptions were that we weren't gonna lose kids and that we were gonna get the $1 million from mental health, right? So, and this is saying that we're essentially predicting that there's gonna be a reduction in student enrollment and a decrease in categoricals.
Yeah, I think from the categoricals, it was the respective of the at-risk that we've been told based on the new formula that we're gonna get a decrease in the transportation categorical, which is unknown. It's hard because it's so, you could spell them all out, I guess.
I heard that, and I get that the at-risk, the new formula, I think, I think the assumption made during the meeting was that was gonna stay flat. Also saying that it probably is gonna decrease. So I guess, as long as we're clear about the assumptions we're making, and I love that we're scenario planning for when we're $1 million short or $2 million short, I guess, are we assuming that there's gonna be no decrease in enrollment, or are we assuming that we're still gonna get that $1 million from mental health?
Right now, we've made those are things that we list that we have to make an assumption on. We haven't put anything together yet for an original budget, and we won't do that until after we hear from the governor, which she's proposed to make a proposal around February 6th.
Okay.
So after that, we will. We're currently in enrollment conversations now for what it looks like next year. Really, it looks like it's going to be flat. However, all the research has said that we're going to be in declining enrollment. We've been fortunate to kind of buck that trend, especially with the new Compass Learning Center. So we're hopeful that we won't lose students, but we have lost students for several years in a row.
No, I get that. And I guess I would say, instead of saying, hey, we're going to reduce student enrollment, maybe just uncertainties around.
We can change that.
So just a little bit more broad than specific to not confuse.
Yeah, uncertainties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. So we'll go ahead and change the minutes with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and amend those. Next is appointment of committee chair. Nominations are in order for the 2025 chair of the Board Finance and Operations Committee. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Andrew Raymond.
Second.
Okay. So with a motion and a second, it has been determined that Trustee Raymond will serve as chair of the Board Finance and Operations Committee for 2025. Even if you voted no, you'd be outvoted. So thank you for the opportunity to serve as the acting chairperson. The newly appointed chair will now preside. I'll hand over a gavel here and back to you.
So the next item on the agenda is the committee meeting schedule for 2025. It's in the packet. Any conversation about meeting dates? I mean, typically we go after curriculum before executive committee. So I mean, I think the day probably works for us. I don't know. I didn't watch curriculum.
Tuesday, just moved it 15 minutes from 8:30 to 8:15.
Gotcha.
So
Time for Thursday morning.
It's way more up to your schedule. I'm more flexible,
Me too.
super flexible.
I mean, this works for me. So
Okay.
If it works for you guys,
Works for me.
perfect.
Yep.
Works for staff.
Mhm.
All right. We don't want to go back to 7:30.
nope.
No, that doesn't work out.
No thanks.
All right, so let's see, next item on the agenda is the 2024-2025 general fund budget amendment. So I will defer to Christine Thomas-Hill.
Sure. So I have a little bit of a brief synopsis here, and it's always difficult to kind of give a presentation of the highlights because obviously this isn't everything. We have, I think, between 15 and 20,000 account codes. So this is just a highlight of major changes. When we adopted our original budget prior to July 1, we adopted a $2.9 million shortfall. So that was a projected draw from fund balance. We've had some changes. We lost 4 more students than we originally projected. So that was about $38,000 loss of revenue. We had less 31 AA, the mental health and safety and security money this year to the tune of about $209,000. We actually had less in an allocation, but we were fortunate to have carryover. So we were able to sustain some of our staffing this year with carryover. We didn't get that per pupil increase, but we did get some offset funding for the Office of Retirement Services as it relates to the MIPSRS rate. So that was a little increase in our revenue. And then the sale of Bertha Voss, we sold for $550, but with closing costs and attorney fees, that netted us $516. And then we did see increases in some categoricals. That is made up of, this year there was an increase in at-risk. They haven't used the new formula just yet. And then we had a small increase in isolated districts and enrollment stabilization. So that's what that recognizes. And then just always bringing to your attention at the amendment time is when we bring in carryover from last year. That's never in the original budget. So we had some carryover for sites, curriculum, and then we had a lot of items that we actually purchased prior to July 1 that we didn't receive. So we can't book those until we actually receive them. I think we had a van, we had a couple other items. So that money just gets rolled into the amendment so we can actually make the expenditures once we receive the items. So in all, we're looking at an excess of expenses of 3.4. We have had for a very long time a positive variance of about 1.5. We've actually been trending a little bit higher than that the last 4 or 5 years. So we're anticipating a draw of 2 million or less. I would imagine between now and the time that we adopt the final budget, it'll be less than that, which is good news. We do have very conservative budgeting practices, and we have had a lot of changes as it relates to people spending all of their budgets. So a little bit, I think, more thoughtful purchases planned out.
Christine, that anticipated variance, just for my own clarification, is that just overages or various things?
Yeah, it's people not spending budgets. A lot of it's due to staff shortages.
Okay.
It's changes in insurance census. So if people switch from family to single, there's a savings there. It just happens because, like I said, we have 15 to 20,000 accounts. And so we have a lot of different budget managers, and not knowing how they're going to spend their funds, it's hard for us to estimate what that is. We've been averaging for the past 5 years, I think, closer to 1.6. So that's good news.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, we'll probably get tighter with our budgets, and so might not be higher than the 1.5, but we've been pretty consistent with 1.5 for 15, 20 years. Yeah. So we always just put it right in the budget, just so that you guys are aware, and especially for Ty, the board is actually approving a draw from fund balance of 3.4. We have to get approval from you to actually spend that. We know we've had the variance, but if it doesn't happen, you have to be comfortable with the 3.4. We've got the history of knowing that we've had that variance, so we just show it so that you guys are aware what we truly anticipate.
And those are the net proceeds, right?
Yes.
Bertha Voss we did close a
550.
couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it was.
That was the actual check
Yep.
right there that was
And
wired in was that
and-
amount.
Remind me, Boardman was last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We booked it the last day of the year.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So we do have in the memo some information as it relates to some of the things that happened. And then we have very detailed information in all the spreadsheets so that you can look at the original budget, the amendment, and our variance. Obviously, the original budget is very early and we don't always know. The amendment shows what we know now, which usually there's a big change between the original and the amendment on our grant allocations. We're usually just finding out about grant allocations in November, so that's when we catch it. It doesn't mean that won't change. We're constantly changing on some of our allocations. They change all year long. They even change after we've booked the year. So we anticipate changes all the way through August for this school year. This is the general fund at the top. We do give a kind of a summary of the foundation allowance analysis so that you can see how we're funded. So we get 10% of the February count in October, 90%. And so we kind of break that down for you. And we show you the difference of our total FTE, and that's student full-time equivalency, not staff. And then we show you at the bottom, which is very interesting to pay attention to, the state and local portions of the foundation. This has drastically changed over the years. We're much more supported by local non-homestead than state. We're nowhere near being out of formula, but you can see that trend is shifting. It used to be about 50% and we're closer to 60% locally.
And to give you an idea of that shift for our neighbors, we now have 2 districts that in the past years have not, Elk Rapids and Suttons Bay are now out of formula. In other words, their property tax revenue exceeds the foundation. And so they essentially keep that. So now all of the Leelanau Peninsula is out of formula. And then Elk Rapids surrounding us. So, you know, there's a big difference there in the realities of the amount of money they have versus what we have. It is starting to be an inequity that really wasn't there as much in 1994 when Proposal A passed. But, you know, people have said to me, well, how close are you? You know, we're still not really close in that aspect, but you can see some of those districts are now, with their property taxes, are collecting $15,000 a student versus the foundation grant that we get. So that does propose a challenge.
And so it looks like our count from last spring to this fall went down about 65-ish. Is that about right? We were at 8,839 last spring, down to 8,773 this fall.
Yep.
Is that kind of what are you thinking that's gonna be about the
We're-
projection for
I think
next budget?
we're actually, it depends on how many we actually had on count day in February for the Compass Learning Center, because that's where we saw a jump of a lot of students. So we're still accepting students after that count date, and John's been looking into opportunities with the state aid and how we can count those students. But we're projecting an influx next year. It's just it's a wondering of how many.
And the Compass Learning, those are full foundation students?
They are.
We get
Virtual,
full
yep.
credit, yeah.
And I mean, we have
Over 100.
over 100, yeah, I knew.
We
it was-
added 70, correct, Sandy, in the second semester.
Wow, another 70 in addition to.
No, that's included. So
That's
there's only
included in
30.
here, yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
but
That's why we only saw a decrease of 4 students, because the projection was quite a bit higher than that.
Wow.
we
So-
think, you know, we know that if you look at, Ty and I have had this conversation, if you look at the out of school district of choice that are going, so much of what we've seen of that is virtual. Not only to a couple of neighbors that have since closed, but also just one-offs that are all over the state that people see on TV or a computer ad or whatever. So we're excited about that we have the wraparound services here in our town for many of those kids that need it. And so we really think that we're building a superior product that families will want to choose. And so we're continuing to work all those kinks out, and we had a great presentation at curriculum. If you didn't get a chance to see that, you can go back and see Jen's presentation on where we're at with all that. But definitely looking up and trying to make sure that all of the things, like for our kids that are maybe high school kids that want career and technical education, center, that they have that opportunity with the virtual. So continuing to look at how we can grow that.
Mm-hmm. It's great. I was over there during the holidays, and just to see the center, it's great.
On the next couple of pages, you can see on the right-hand column, we try to put notes as it relates to why there's a variance. A lot of it between the original and the First Amendment is simply just knowing what our allocations are. But we make notes on the next page as to each of those items and why it was impacted. Same as you look forward to as you look at the restricted local funds, restricted state funds, those ones change quite a bit as it relates to our state funds. One of the big ones is at risk. That changes throughout the year. And then it gets into federal funds. And I'm just trying to give an overview, so if
No,
you
yeah,
have
I
any
got it.
questions.
Yeah.
Then we have our food service fund. This one, we're a little bit worried about food service. We're struggling, well, there's been quite a few snow days, so there's always loss of revenue there. But we have a lot of staff to prepare our meals, and even though it's free and reduced, we still have limitations on what we can purchase, and those costs are drastically going up for our food. So it's something that we're trying to manage with our labor hours as best we can. Then we have our student school activity fund. This one you'll always see as balanced between revenue and expenses for the most part. This is most of the student activity funds, so PTO funds and things like that sit in our accounts. Community service fund, so this is our childcare, our tuition-based childcare. It's also LEAP. So those two are kind of wrapped together, and then they're separated on the next couple of sheets so you can see where they stand. We've had a nice fund balance in childcare. I don't know if you recall, but we got several grants for the last 3 or 4 years, not this year, but we've got some grants to help offset costs. So we didn't have to increase costs, and we're in the scenario now where we have to increase costs to make our expenses. So we're trying to slowly increase costs over the next couple of years instead of one big shot to parents. And then you'll see the detail on LEAP. And then we just get into the federal grants so that you guys know what grants we have and what those allocations look like. We try to put the names and descriptions as best we can, but if you ever have any questions with that, we certainly can explain it. A lot of the, all of these grants here federally are restricted, which means they have a specific purpose, and we can't really veer from that. And then we have restricted state funds. Categoricals at risk is the biggest one, but a lot going on there. There's a lot of changes with those grants throughout the year. And then some local grants, and a lot of those usually come forward as donations or grants that we accept through the Board Finance Committee. And that's it. Any questions on the budget amendment?
I actually have a question on the slide that you've got up here. I'm trying to follow it. So our original budget this is for general fund.
Mm-hmm.
We approved a draw of 2.9
Correct.
million. It looks like we've got increases in revenues of about 1.3 million, and then increases in expenses of 450,000.
Well, we had some decreases in revenue, so those two red numbers are decreases in
Right,
revenue.
but the other three are positives, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a total, right? I'd
Yeah,
have to total those up in my
it would
head,
be
so
hard
it's-
for me to put everything. I try to highlight the substantial, so
Okay.
it won't
So
ever
there's
really
other
truly
stuff.
add.
There are more expenses than just the 450,000.
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out like how we're going. We got increases in revenues of like 1.3 million, and we're actually adding more draw to the general
Nope.
fund.
it's less because you wanna look at the bottom line. So the 2.9 is
Did the
after the
2.9
variance.
include the 1.5 variance?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I feel like
So
I
you're
asked that
looking at
already.
2.9, you're looking at 2.9 to
Gotcha.
1.9.
The 2.9 includes the 1.5.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we just try to put that excess there so you know you're actually approving.
So we're actually
3.4.
approving a positive budget amendment of about $1 million.
Correct.
So long story short, we're
$1 million.
Yes.
yeah, drawing.
$1,000,000 better, but
I was
still.
comparing the top line to
Yeah,
the
sorry.
bottom line, and I was like,
Sorry.
this doesn't make sense. Okay, got it.
But I appreciate the 3.5, right? And as we send the note
Yeah.
to staff about, so I think that's helpful.
And our staff's pretty used to seeing that variance, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
We've always found it's much better to tell them we expect that than to say, oh, the sky's falling, we're gonna draw 3.4, and then, oh, look, we're not. That never feels good, so we try to be as close as possible, but still conservative.
Any other questions on budget amendment? If not, this, I'm assuming, is gonna be a discussion item for.
Yes, yep.
So we will move that, this item to the full board for discussion. We will move on now to bid services and purchases. The first item is a school bus purchase, and I'll go right back to Christine.
So, as a highlight, we do have annual allocations for school buses. We used to do $1 million a year. Now we're at 500,000 a year. We do believe with the new bus wash that we're able to keep our buses longer. So that's something that we've kind of tackled transportation with. I asked Cindy Farah to be here. She's our purchasing manager. I wanted her to just give an understanding of how we use purchasing cooperatives. I'm not really sure if you're familiar, but I thought it'd be a good time. So Cindy, if you could kind of go over how we use purchasing cooperatives, and then throughout this memo, how we use them for the bus, and Tyson can answer questions about the buses itself.
Absolutely. Good morning. So purchasing cooperatives essentially are they do the standard bidding process for governmental agencies such as K through 12 school districts. And so they vet the whole bidding process, they find the most competitive price, and then essentially they award a contract to, say, vendor A. And so then school districts such as TCAPS are able to take advantage of that cooperative pricing with vendor A directly instead of going through the traditional bidding process. And so it allows us to get the best price moving forward while also following state of Michigan guidelines as well as board policies as well. So essentially in this specific purchase, we were able to, one, take advantage of the MSBO bus purchase program. So that process of the purchasing process is vetted through MSBO. We are also able to not only purchase the buses through MSBO, but then add our own things that we need specifically to the bus, such as the two-way radios and some cameras. The two-way radios, we are able to use MyDeal, which is another purchasing cooperative through the state of Michigan directly. So it allows us to get that best price moving forward, and it also allows a negotiating platform. With the traditional bidding process, you send it out for bid, you put it in the Record Eagle, you wait 2 weeks, you do the bid opening process, and then you choose the best vendor that has the best cost-effective option. Using the purchasing cooperative allows us to have a one-on-one contact with that vendor and try to get the best price that we possibly can for our district. So essentially, with the two-way radios, we were able to go back and forth and get the best price for these two-way radios, as well as other radios if we buy them in the future. So we did that from MyDeal. And then there are also some, proprietary things that we purchase as well. And Tyler Technologies is one of those where we call that a single source. And that means that vendor, that's the only vendor that we can purchase this specific item through. They have proprietary software that we can't get anywhere else. And so that fits in with the Tyler Technologies as well. And those are also ways that we purchase things as well. So, yeah, we try to use purchasing cooperatives when we need to. Obviously, if we can't latch on to a purchasing cooperative, we definitely go through the traditional bidding process. But it does create a negotiating platform for our district, so we can save some money.
One thing I'll add, MSBO is Michigan School Business Officials Association, the acronym.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. I guess I'll start. So my first question is the Tyler technology the scanning for when students get on and off the bus?
Yes, sir. That's our routing software, and then the scan on, scan off for the students.
Okay.
Yes, that's the tablet that will be on the bus.
Okay. So the safety precautions for students being on and off. And then I was just going to ask, are we retiring any buses with this purchase, and how does that process work?
So the mechanics would pick the oldest buses, and we currently have 10 that are all the same year. So they will pick the 5 of those, which are the regular conventional buses that we'll be replacing. Through the mechanics process, they go through them, and our plan is to get rid of those buses prior to the bus inspection this year, so we're not putting money into something that's gonna go away.
And those get, so this is just the purchase of new buses, any retirement proceeds
Goes
that we
into the
get
general
would
fund.
get back. Okay, gotcha.
Yes, and we sell all those on the website, yes. And then the transit, we will not be retiring one of our transits currently. So that's the one bus that's a little more expensive than the rest. So those are our trip buses or, yes,
With the storage underneath.
yes.
Any other questions from the committee? I guess I do have one more. So you said we allocate 500,000 of bond funds. So did we not do a purchase last year, or is this just, are we purchasing?
We did a
purchasing
purchase
more?
last year, and in fact, we still haven't gotten all those buses just yet.
They, currently for a regular conventional bus, it's 1.5 years.
Okay.
And we're just getting the ones that we ordered 1.5 years ago. They're starting to trickle in, so this will count for 2 years.
Yeah, so they get a $500,000 allocation, but because we sell bonds in 2 years, so he has $1 million over 2 years.
Gotcha.
So it's better to use that million all at once, especially knowing the delay in time. And we jumped on it right away because pricing has been going up, so we tried to get the same pricing we got 1.5 years ago, and it's pretty close.
And usually we sell to local or neighboring districts, right? Like
Quite often that happens.
usually will buy the buses.
They know they're very well taken care of. And a lot of school districts don't have a bond program to be able to purchase buses.
And this is our first 2024 bond? Or is this 2024 bond money?
Yes, it is. It's not the first though.
Oh, okay.
We've had other little items.
And do we have 2018 bond money left?
We do. We had $10,095,000 left that we're selling. Some of that has been set aside for a field house project, and then a small portion of it was used recently for STEM equipment. Jesse brought $60,000 worth of STEM equipment through.
For the innovation and manufacturing centers.
Okay, I mean, it's a high dollar, but these are pretty routine purchases, so I'm personally okay with moving this to consent agenda, but open for
Yeah.
discussion.
I'm okay with consent.
Excellent, so let's move on to the next item under bid services and purchases, which is Blair and Cortade Elementary School lockers. And this one is gonna go to Paul.
Good morning. I'll start out with, I've got several items on here today, so I'll just start out with all of our bid projects are advertised in the Record Eagle with the State of Michigan Sigma purchasing website through the builders exchanges in Michigan, and we've reached out not just the local, but we advertise in the Grand Rapids and Lansing builders exchanges as well. And then there's other statewide forums that pick up our project bids, and then also on our TCAPS Capital Projects webpage. So this first project is student locker. It's a straight up 1-for-1 replacement of the existing lockers that are the original to the building, and over the years have taken quite a beating, and we struggle to repair them as it is. So we received several bids for this, 5 as a matter of fact, and we're recommending that we award the contract to the Ray Haven Group for the total contract not to exceed $246,000. And that work would be completed over this summer.
And it does include a 10%
It doesn't
contingency.
include the 10% contingency.
It's amazing that one of the bids is like 100,000 over the other. You'd think it'd be a pretty straightforward.
We received a lot of interest from around the country on this. We got bids from Colorado. We got calls from all over the place on this. It was pretty amazing.
And when you remove the old lockers, is there any way to sell them for repurposing? Or do they come out and sort of?
Not in the condition these are in.
Okay.
And, I'll be honest, I've seen auctions of things, bank of them will go for like $1.50. You'll have more labor yourself pulling them out, trying to sell them, doing all that, than them taking them. And these are very rusted out on the bottom, from, you can imagine snowy boots,
Yeah.
everything in there that they're past their life. But the labor that we would have and all that to do all that is more than we would get, truthfully, in value for them.
Okay. I know sometimes we see them in, nice updated residential houses.
Yeah.
They try to reuse, repurpose, and they're kinda cool.
And we've been reusing several lockers from other locations where we can to replace these,
Mhm.
so that they have working ones, but it's gotten to the point where it's just not feasible.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, I'm looking at the 2018, what other lockers did we replace? 2018, like Silver Lake,
I think East Middle School, right? Didn't East Middle School have a bunch of lockers?
I don't remember.
Not that I did.
Westwoods.
I did Westwoods when we
The
did.
addition was put
when
on.
The addition was, well, before the addition was put on, we did some other work and we included the corridor upgrades. So we used to have carpeting in the corridors. And we took all that out, redid the flooring, and then redid the lockers at the same time.
And obviously, we didn't do Cortate in 2018.
Right.
That's right, okay.
Yeah, it's always a struggle when you have an original plan and then when projects actually come to fruition and costs are associated to them, some projects end up falling off. And or some things come up that you weren't aware of that become priorities. So what's in that original plan, a lot of it might not have gotten done.
So this will do all the lockers at Blair, but not all the lockers at Cortate, because there was an addition done at Cortate
That has newer lockers.
that has newer lockers.
And they're the same size and.
Same size, you know,
These
The-
are actually different.
a little bit.
We have a new standard now. The ADA lockers have an additional shelf at the bottom, and the principal love those. It gives them the opportunity to put boots at the bottom and keep them separate from books, but also it provides opportunity that any of our lockers are ADA compliant. So it's kind of our new standard.
And they're pretty age appropriate too, because they were storing their boots in the hallways on the floor,
Mhm.
so that the younger kids, the smaller kids, could lay their books and papers on the bottom of the locker, so they weren't having to reach up to that top shelf. So we get the lockers now that have that shelf in the bottom, so you get the boots out of the hallway, the bottom of the locker, and they can still put their boots and papers. or
Yeah, I
books
mean,
and
I
papers.
fully support it. I guess my only question is why not $2018, but we can discuss that another time.
Yeah, and that's a difficult conversation because in the end, there are rules as it relates to that money and when you spend it after you sell it, and then there's cash flow issues. So in the grand scheme of things, how we've always operated it, it becomes one, when you sell it in 2025, you're having one chunk of money. And then Wes has to do the magic to balance it all out and close it out, to make sure it abided by the time frame. The projects always meet the requirements because our legal ballot language is always everything legally possible, so that's never an issue. But it's a balancing act of closing it out with the exact number of dollars, and so by keeping it kind of fluid for us to be able to close it out with whatever project we need, Wes is able to get to the dollar as best he can with bigger projects. It's harder if you have smaller projects to close out a small chunk of 10 million. So you try to take bigger projects to close that out.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no other questions on this item, again, I'm supportive of this going to the consent calendar, unless there's objection.
Me too.
Okay. And it looks like, Paul, we're gonna stay with you and move on to some elementary building walls.
Yep, some classroom partitioning. Currently at Cherry Knoll, Long Lake, and Willow Hill, we have a movable partition between the art rooms and the music rooms. And it's not serving its purpose that it was originally designed for. If they open them at all, they can't get them closed. And they're not very sound attenuating. So the classes disrupt one another as they're going along during the day. So we're proposing to take those walls out and replace them with a higher STC rated, which is a sound transmission coefficient wall. We'll actually build a double wall to knock the noise down between the spaces. And it'll be a fixed permanent wall.
Okay.
You know, it'll be a fixed permanent wall.
So these are like the walls that are on like the track that you push all the
So
way to
the
one side.
existing ones are,
Yeah.
yep.
Gotcha.
The existing ones are, and we'll take those down.
And if you remember, when we talked about music programs, there was a goal to make sure we had a dedicated music room in every elementary. So this helps with that. Also on the Silver Lake one, that one's not a higher rated because what we're actually doing there is breaking up a full-fledged classroom for itinerant spaces so that if their enrollment increases, they don't take a full-fledged music classroom to be able to accommodate, so.
And we'd looked at this, I believe last year, we had started down this road and just ran out of time and funds.
Well,
So we
it
brought
was
it
a
back.
scramble, I think, to get done, just to start school, some of
Yep.
the renovation.
Oh, yeah.
So, and on this, we only received one bid. It was from Eckler Building Solutions. But we work with Eckler quite a bit around the district and that, so have every confidence in them. We're recommending award to them for $161,590, and that also includes a 10% contingency.
Alright, again, no objections on this one. I would propose moving it to the consent calendar, at our next meeting.
Sounds good.
Moving on to, Traverse Heights, classroom and cafeteria addition.
So we're proposing to add 3 classrooms to the northmost wing of Traverse Heights. There'll be early ed, kindergarten sized classrooms and that. And along with that addition, we're expanding the existing cafeteria, which is quite small, doing some renovations to the existing music room and adding another toilet room between 2 existing classrooms, which was alternate number 1 in the bid. Alternate number 2 was to create some more itinerant office space, and it was decided that we don't need that space, so we are not recommending accepting that alternate on the project.
It was a nice to have, but for $84,000, the principal agreed that it wasn't that necessary. We just did renovations last year to provide some private spaces for itinerants.
Yeah, I guess my only question is just looking ahead and kind of seeing the growth at that school, just to because we did just do those additions on I believe the south side of the building, right? So now,
For
Those are
NWS.
all
yeah,
the
northwest.
ISD's
Yeah.
classrooms, yes.
So, okay, so just, again, just making sure that this addition is gonna kind of handle years to come.
It will, and that's another reason why we're proposing not doing alternate 2, because that would have broke up a full classroom into these permanent itinerant spaces. So by leaving it a classroom, they can still use it, but it's flexible to be able to turn it into a classroom. We believe they have enough. We also have 2 programs in there, 2 classrooms that we're renting out to Head Start. So if we ever got into that big of a crunch, we have options.
Okay.
Or we could maybe provide different space for them.
So we did receive 4 bids for this project, and during our post-bid interview, Comstack realized that they had left a chunk of the project out of their bid, so they asked to withdraw their bid and allow our contractors to do that. We don't hold them to their feet to the fire like that, but
Was there, I'm assuming there was conversation with them about if they included all of the items that were required in the bid, that it would have been over the next.
they would not have been low in anyway. They left almost $400,000 worth of masonry work out of their bid. So Hallmark was our second, well, really the lowest responsible bidder, and we are recommending award to Hallmark on a $3,250,460. And that does include the 10% contingency again. And Hallmark just as a matter of fact, is the contractor that has just completed that ISD edition. So they're very familiar with the school and the systems there.
Paul, I think what dollar amount did you just say? Cause I see 2,958,000.
You're looking at the bid spec,
So
Yeah, sorry.
and that doesn't include the contingency.
Gotcha, okay.
32.
Gotcha.
the 29558 does not, does not include the 10% contingency. This is the actual, on the second page, that's the amount that the contract will be written for, but we're asking for the contingency for changes.
The only thing left to bring on Traverse Heights is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So we will need to outfit the classrooms. We believe we have enough cafeteria tables. I don't know if you remember, but we did elementary cafeteria tables and we bought all the same. So we have extras and they'll be able to match. So Rayanne is doing an evaluation to see if we have enough. But when we go to purchase the furniture for the classrooms, if we need more, we'll purchase them then. that'll be brought forward a little bit later to you guys.
We'll do that through a consortium. We did the same thing when we added on to Westwoods Elementary. We purchased that furniture through a couple of consortiums, and we'll use the same setup and furniture that we did out there.
I'm excited for this project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kudos to our wonderful neighborhood school for their growth.
Yeah.
It has been a drastic change in enrollment. What year was it that we actually had conversations about
first year.
potentially closing because
My
they were
first year,
under,
5 years ago.
there were like 179 students, and I think with all the other programs in the building, they're at 350.
It's awesome.
You know,
That's
wonderful
That's
culture.
really great,
Yeah.
great culture, yeah.
I think, me personally, these next 2 or 3 items, just from the dollar perspective, I would propose we just add them to a discussion item, and we can have a quick discussion to allow other members if they wanna have any questions on them. No objections, I'll move this to a discussion item for the next full board meeting, and we'll move on to the next item, which is the West Senior High driveway expansion.
Can I ask a quick
Oh, sure,
question?
go
When, just because I'm new to finance, like what's kind of your limit of like adding it to discussion?
I mean, it's just preference, I guess.
Okay.
I personally, like, this is a multi-million-dollar project, and it's inclusivity for
Yeah.
other members that aren't on this committee, that
Okay.
if they have potential questions.
There might be questions just because we did a project, even though it was Northwest Ed.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Just curious. Thank you.
Okay, West High School site circulation and pedestrian improvements. This has been a topic of discussion for several years.
Decades.
Since it was built.
In fact, after it was built, the circulation pattern was changed. After it was first built, it had gone the direction we're proposing for it to go in now. It was reversed and changed the other way.
And that was because when you're letting a student off a school bus, they had to cross in front of the bus the other way. That's why it is the way it is now, so we can let students off actually at the sidewalk. So we'll be going back to the normal way. It's still going to be one way, but in parts it'll have 2 lanes. And a lot better clarity as it relates to where to go and room to be able to maneuver.
So the goal of the project was to eliminate some of the crossing of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, and that by moving the parking areas up to the sidewalk and the curb adjacent to the building, so we're not walking across that loop road, and to separate
So
bus and vehicular traffic.
It is a cluster.
So that's where we're at with the plan. Miller Davis is our construction manager on the project. They facilitated the bids, and that they broke it into 6 bid categories. As you can see, we had a signage package that's separate: mechanical, electrical, earthwork, asphalt paving, and the site concrete. We conducted a week and a half's worth of post-bid interviews with the groups. There was a couple of incomplete bids that we received on that. We found that out through that post-bid interview process. We had 3 alternates on the project, and we are recommending acceptance of all 3 alternates. One was for an additional ADA parking lot that was right at the what's going to be the new main entrance for the office on the east side of the school. So there'll be a little cut in there for additional ADA parking, and we'll extend the snow melt system out to that parking area from the building itself. Alternate 2 was to mill and repave the parking area in front of the football field by the tennis courts up there. We had put that in as a cost alternate just to make sure we had funds for the project before we did that. And then there's an area for heavy duty paving for like buses and heavier vehicles, and that was a 3rd alternate to extend that up into different areas of the parking lot. The total of the bids was $4,053,060 with a 10% contingency. We're asking for approval of $4,458,366.
Couple things to note, we're also, part of this project, we've spelled out a little bit of an extension at Long Lake Elementary School for the exit, so we are actually extending the right turn lane. There's been congestion on site getting out, and so we have the opportunity to extend the right turn lane so that people turning left aren't stuck behind a bunch of cars trying to turn left on a busy road. It actually helps with buses exiting too, I think it makes that turn radius a little bit better. As it relates to West Senior High, one of the big benefits, actually, the road commission approached us a couple of years ago. They really want to get rid of that second traffic light that we have for our existing exit right now. It doesn't align with anything, it creates some backup, and they wanted us to have all traffic at Herkner, and this accomplishes that. So all of our entrance and exit traffic will be at the light, which is right at the Herkner light, so it all aligns. So we won't have vehicles kind of stuck between two lights and some chaos going on right there. And then we added a sidewalk, so there's gonna be a crosswalk at Herkner, and then we have a push button crosswalk on our site when it actually crosses traffic.
And that's all been coordinated with the county. In fact, the county got a grant to do that light work and that, so.
Great, yeah. So the county's paying for the light at Herkner and Long Lake?
Yep, the reconstruction of the
Not at Long Lake.
intersection and
I mean, Long Lake Road.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah,
at the light at Herkner
Yeah.
and Long Lake.
that's great.
And then we'll be dismantling the other one
They're covering that cost.
with the crosswalk, correct, at
Yep.
Herkner? Yeah,
Yep.
they're covering that.
That's great.
Is this phased, or are we trying to do this all up?
Yeah, it's phased. We, you know, the way construction projects have been going, there was no way we wanted to try to tackle it in one summer. There's just no way. I don't believe. I think it would take a miracle for them to be able to do all that work. And then to think about how difficult it will be to manage the school day. There is gonna be some crossover. We anticipate they'll be doing construction, all summer through October until they can't really pave anymore. So, excuse me, the goal is the first summer to get the entrance lined up, the bus loop and the parent drop off, which is when you're looking at the entrance to the left. And then the next summer we'll do the other side. So we've met to discuss what that looks like, how we'll get traffic in and out in the interim. It's not necessarily ideal, but I think given the scenario of how huge the project is and the fact that they're going to be using the building the whole time. We're also gonna be doing other construction projects, so we anticipate, Train will be there all summer, doing
Heat pumps.
hundred some heat pumps. We also have restroom renovations going on there, so, there's gonna be a lot going on within the building, and, you know, if they propose getting more done sooner, we'll certainly have that conversation with them, but I would rather plan for 2 summers and possibly do a little better than be in chaos of being late.
And this budget is for the whole project
Yep.
though, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
I just have a quick comment, and I support making it more efficient for families to drive to Long Lake Elementary. The idea of continued safe and efficient access to our buildings. I hope that we will also make it safe and efficient for families and kids to get themselves to school. And I know we've done great work with Safe Routes to School. We were very close with Long Lake Township. There's a small easement connection to the neighborhoods north of Long Lake Elementary that would take a small little nudge to help those kids, because we have a wonderful trail north of the building that through the woods to those neighborhoods. So I hope that, yes, let's make Carline efficient, but let's also make it easy, safe, convenient, efficient for kids to walk to school to Long Lake.
Ty, do you know,
I didn't
is
know
there
that.
anything that goes from there towards West High School?
I don't know. There's a power line, and there's always been discussion of easements on near power lines, but I don't know.
Well, I know we were in discussion while we're doing this, working on this project with the safe routes coming up from West Middle up into the neighborhood across the way on that, out to Herkner and that, to connect all that.
Cause I believe the township now has plans and a grant to connect the trail, the Garfield Township, all the way to the new senior housing project right across the street. So we'll connect all the way from essentially, Montessori, West Middle, all the way to West High School. That's why I asked the question
Well,
of,
I mean, that would be
is there a
huge.
way to get back, that's what I've been wondering, is there a way, that makes sense to get down Long Lake Road towards Long Lake Elementary that would continue that thing on, so.
Yeah, that's a big, this lift is very small, and we were very close.
Yeah.
We went to several Long Lake trustee meetings.
Yeah.
And that's a small little improvement that I think would make a big deal for those kids who just
Sure.
live north. There's
Yeah.
another easement right next to Westwoods that we almost got as well, all too, so anyways, just something for us to think about
In
as
the
a
future,
district.
yeah, good to know. Yep.
Bless you.
Okay, any other questions on the driveway expansions? If not, again, I just, unique project, multi-million dollars, I would just propose putting it on for discussion in case there's other questions, so.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to West Senior High School restrooms.
Yeah, this is a renovation and a reconstruction of two groups of restrooms at West Senior High. One is located right off the Commons cafeteria area, and that there's two restrooms there, and then down around the corner off in between C and B wings, there's a group restrooms there that we're looking at converting into single-user restrooms. And that, so it's restroom
This will help
finishes.
quite a bit with supervision.
And locking, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we've heard from the kids
Yeah.
and parents and staff about locking of the bathrooms because of security, obviously, or supervision, but then the kids can't get into the bathroom, so.
Well, this will open them up, not so that, supervision will be made a lot easier for what's
With the
in the
access to the doors to the single stall, so there'll be floor to ceiling door and they'll have their own sink. Well, the one set won't have a sink, but the set by the Commons will have their own sink within. But the common area getting to the restroom is wide open for supervision possibilities. So like in
And the
the,
renovation's not gonna hurt them either.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, they're not.
They're original.
Great.
They are
Yeah.
original, so
Yeah.
little renovation,
Yeah.
sprucing up's not gonna hurt
And
things
the
at
ones
all.
the ones are opposite of the auditorium, is that on the other?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Other side of the
Yeah.
Commons cafeteria area.
That's great.
So we're not losing any fixtures, we're maintaining the same fixture count. Single user. And we did receive 3 bids on this one, and Comstock, after withdrawing their bid for Traverse Heights, was scrutinized very heavily before we decided to do this. Comstock actually was involved in the construction of West Senior High when it was originally built. And we haven't had a project with them since I've been here. So it's nice to have another contractor or party out there involved. So we are recommending an award to them in the amount of $575, $740, and that does include, again, a 10% contingency.
All right, so on this one, I know we've talked about the restrooms at West High School quite a bit on the board level, and as we've had conversations about our safety discussions at the board level, so I'm comfortable on this one for consent, but again, open for discussion.
I'm good with the
Yep.
consent, but we have talked about it quite a bit.
Yep. Okay, so hearing no objections, we'll move that item to the consent calendar and move on to our informational items. The first item is our standing capital project update.
You get to keep talking. So here we go. I've flipped the order here. Usually I show you guys Central High first. So, this is West Senior High, obviously. Things are looking really well on the outside. Other than they're covered with snow right now, but concrete's in walkways and that. Is that your computer again?
That way, yeah.
That way.
It looks great. You drive by, it looks like it's been there forever.
So things are moving
It's a
along.
nice like face of the building.
Yeah, it is.
Really
Looks great.
sharp.
It presents a nice facade out there, it does. So inside, finishes are going in, floor finishes, ceiling finishes, lighting. There's carpets down, casework's going in. Electrical fixtures are being finished up, connections made, all through the interior. Painting's pretty much done, there's a couple of things left to be painted yet. That's the big space. Obviously, the railing needs to be painted on the stairs, and then the floor gets its seal coat. So they've been moving everything out of the small spaces out into the big space and then getting rid of it or distributing it. And right now we're struggling with, we're getting deliveries of equipment that we've ordered and trying to find a place to put it because I don't want to put it in these spaces because then it's in the way of them finishing their work.
Floor, yeah.
So But you can see the cord reels have been hung, lighting's up, all the painting's been done up there. So moving right along, and that's some of the equipment. We're stuffing it into their office space we gave them inside the building there. And then this was the I don't want to say leftover space, but these were the remains of the 2 classrooms that we cut into when we did the addition. And this is going to be the esports space at West Senior.
Esports?
Esports.
What is that?
So this is the computer gaming team
Okay,
that they generally have a challenge and they go against other schools
okay.
in that. So it's a new emerging, lots of high schools
Huh.
that are a part of that program.
A little bit of work left to do in there. Ceiling pads, painting, flooring's down. And then at Central is about 2 weeks behind West now. They've flip-flopped. Central used to be ahead of West. Now they're behind with some of the things going on there. But again, the exterior is almost finished up. The plywood, we're waiting for the overhead door to come. And that, they're just, when they show up, they'll go in. But we're waiting for that right now. And as you can see, there's a lot of people here working on the space. And again, the interior space, they're trying to move things out of the way so they can do their finishes. That is the CAD lab area. And this is, I want to say it's the clean lab space. And that see casework's going in, lighting, ceiling grid, casework. That's the meeting room space. They're finished painting it. So things are out of the way right now, or they're covered so they can finish paint. And then the rest of the finishes will go in. It's a mechanical space. It's ready to roll. Systems are all up and running. Epoxy flooring's down. That space is ready. So this was 2 weeks ago, I want to say. They were prepping and painting at Central, and this is the space now. It's been painted, and again, you can see where they're moving things out of the side rooms so they can finish the side rooms. And I do have a few pieces of equipment that are sitting in there because I can't find a space over at Central to put them yet, but I might have to get a temporary container or something to get that stuff out of the way.
Looks good. Looks really good.
So,
Yeah, looks great. Good.
Yeah, the biggest hiccup we have right now is issues with a fire rated door. So there was a change by the fire marshal kind of mid.
We passed that. It's taken care of. The door frame's gonna be there. We're gonna put drywall in instead of the glass so that we can get past that. And so now it's switched. We're waiting for those overhead doors to get here.
Yeah, and my understanding on that one is it was pretty much the manufacturer stalling us as it relates to design.
Yeah.
They didn't approve the original design, and it took them forever to provide a new design, and then they actually went back to our design. But by the time the doors were ordered, so we'll be waiting for that. But you don't need the actual garage doors. That we can actually plywood, but the exit doors are required for egress. So we needed to make sure that those were in before we can get any kind of temporary occupancy. So our goal is to get temp occupancy around February 15th so they can go and practice with their robotics. We're working really hard on that. At West.
Yeah, we may have to, the West folks have offered the Central kids to come over. Their goal is just to get a practice floor for the new game that they have. So our hope is to get a practice floor in there. I've talked with the robotic staff, the mentors, kids, all that. That's their hope to have that. So that's what we're trying to make happen.
All right, let's move on to the next item, which is a finance update for Christine.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we're supposed to see something from the governor around February 6th. Don't know what that means for House and Senate, how quickly they'll respond. They seem to be kind of disorganized at this point. with some potential lawsuits going on and some other issues with bills not making it to the governor's desk. So I'm not really sure what will happen on there too, but at least we'll get a good sense of the governor's priorities. And really the governor's priorities last year are what took us by surprise. So I think having a good sense of what she's looking at. I know with universal preschool, it didn't quite meet the mark this year for what they were looking at, so I'd be surprised if they put any more money into it. We also know there is money in state aid to give, and so it'll be interesting to see what her priorities are. And then we'll just kind of watch that process as we get information from the House and Senate when we get it. And as you know, we'll just have to do our best estimate to be able to approve the budget by July 1. But at least we'll have something to start reacting to in February.
I like the wording there, Christine. Something to react to. True.
So that's really all I had on finance. We just keep that as a standing item.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is a filter for clogging.
Yep, so I just want to make you aware, so this is something that actually I think we've been talking about at least about a year. So new requirements with lead testing and for not just schools, but in schools. Some of these requirements are going to be very hard to adjust to. The first deadline we did meet, it was this January 25th of 25. We had to have a plan in place. They're very relaxed about what that plan looks like because they know it's a work in progress, and they also know that they haven't provided timely guidance for schools. I think a lot of schools haven't even done an audit. So we were required first to do an audit of every spot really where water is coming out of some kind of spigot or faucet, even like our slop sinks in our custodian rooms. The requirement will be if you want to use it as consumable, so any kind of drinking water, we would have to put a filter on it, and we would have to lead test it every year. That's a lot of work for us, so we're going to be going through a process of eliminating those sources where water is consumable. We're really going to be focusing on those bottle fillers and drinking fountains. Those actually have a new requirement too on what kind of filter we have to use. So it has to have a filter status light on it. Not all of ours do, and we're required to have one per every 100 students in a building. So we have a count that we have to meet as it relates to our buildings with students in it. They don't necessarily have to be strategically placed, but obviously we're trying to do the best we can. We've added them through some of our construction projects throughout the year. Some of the ones that we already added will have to be replaced because they don't meet the requirements. We did apply for a grant and get some money to be able to swap those out. There is another round of grants coming available that we'll be able to apply for. But Rayanne, the director of facilities, will be meeting with principals because this is going to be a change in kind of how they do business. So the first thing we want to do is find out if in classroom spaces there's any requirement by anything to be able to have drinking water available. We know with our Head Start programs that we rent space to, they are required to have drinking water in the classroom. So we might have to look at those a little bit differently than the rest of them. We're also required to do signage. So everything that has water basically coming out of it, we're going to have to be able to say whether it's consumable or not consumable. So Filter First and Eagle is working on some recommended signage, not for consumption, hand washing only, those things. The signage will probably be a little bit later. We're actually required to meet all these by June of 26. So we've got time. Rayanne's been working on the audit that we had. We actually had some bus drivers over the summer do the audit of every building, and we're working on the plan as to what we're gonna do with each of those items. We're gonna be a little bit in a world of hurt here soon. Our plumber is actually retiring. We've got him for another 2 weeks, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we do have time. So if we need to contract that work out, we will. And some of that contracted work can be covered by the grant. Unfortunately, the grant is really not anywhere near what we'll need to do this work, and I know a lot of school districts are really struggling with that. But we're right on point with what we're supposed to be doing. We have general plans on how we're going to handle classrooms. We're likely going to cap off all bubblers, any kind of drinking water from classrooms, and make it hand washing only. There's now, we had been asking for quite some time if there was a way to do any filters that weren't inline. They were requiring inline filters, so we're looking at filters that were add-ons to faucets, and they didn't allow that. Now they're thinking they might allow that. So again, guidance is coming, so we'll just kind of keep up with that. Anytime there's any kind of webinar, Rand's attending it to make sure that we're staying up to date, but we do have a plan. It is available if anybody were to ask us to look at it. It is a working document, and Eagle said as long as you have something and you started it, we're pretty far in the process, so I feel pretty good about where we are. There's some minor things that we have to make sure we're meeting with principals to see if there's something we're missing as it relates to capping something off they might absolutely need. And then just kind of educating as to why we're trying to cut down. If we have to lead test every source that is consumable every year, we just don't have the manpower to do that. So we're going to have to make some different decisions. So that's what that is. It's been difficult, not great guidance. A lot of unhappy school district personnel, but we'll get there.
But important.
It is important.
Let's move on to the next item, which is student attendance.
Yeah, so we did have on Martin Luther King Day, we did have not meet our 75% requirement for student attendance. So you have to meet 75% throughout the whole entire district. So you can have one school be lower, but as long as the rest of them bring us up to that average, I think we were closer to 69%. It's been a learning experience for us to figure out what that means potentially. It hasn't happened since I've been here that I know of. It's interesting and actually kind of sad on how they calculate the potential impact if it's financial. They actually they don't just take your foundation allowance of 9608 and a formula related to that. They take everything on your state aid. So even the 3% money we're getting to reimburse teachers, we have to take a hit on that revenue as well. It's your bottom line of your state aid that we'll get in August, so we won't even know the potential impact until August. If we have a financial impact, there is an opportunity to use an emergency closure day if it's one of your first 6. It can't be beyond that. So if we take 6 emergency closure days, we will have to take the financial impact, and we won't know that number until August. It's likely around $25,000.
That was kind of it was just kind of a crazy day between a half day, between the weather. I know my kids were all gone for ski meets, Central. Yeah.
And we had a lot of parents, and it is a struggle on a half day at the middle schools. I think the students are picked up at 10:30. So we had parents that I think were just concerned about weather and thought, not gonna risk it for that short of amount of instructional day, so.
It's too bad, cause I think the good work was done on that day and like trying to look at it different to provide that education and, I hope it doesn't backfire because of all those other things.
I think it was the perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the TCEA and calendar negotiations wants to have a conversation about what that might mean in the future. So Connie will start conversations with them, and we've had a conversation at cabinet about certain things we'd like to see in changes in the calendar. But those conversations will be ongoing. We like to try to get a negotiated calendar before spring break so parents know what spring break is next year before they leave the spring break. So she started early this year, so hopefully we'll have something soon.
But that is one that's gonna be under discussion. We're gonna have to, have discussions on, I know the board's got input on the amount of half days or early release days. There was some people that really liked what we did with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It should still be a full day off, to celebrate the national holiday. So we're definitely, as a board, as we get into this calendar negotiation, we're gonna need to have some conversations about what that looks like. But it doesn't mean we still can't do some of that work regardless, in our days that are not right on that day, but maybe close. So it'll be interesting in all of your input as we get there.
When does that input happen, John?
We've started that conversation as a group. Connie will start that conversation with Christine with the TCEA over the next few weeks. And then once we have something that we think that everybody's kind of in touch with, I'll bring that and share that with the board's thoughts.
And we've used, how many weather days have we used?
We've used 5.
Yes.
Well, we
This
can't
is
use one more,
a
right?
actual.
Right, we have
northern
one
Michigan
board.
winter,
Five.
yeah.
For
If-
some reason I thought we were at four,
No,
but
if
we've
we
used
use,
five.
if we, you know, right
use
now,
one
we
more,
would
Tyson
be
five.
good right now,
Yeah.
but at the same point, you know, I just wanna stress, not gonna keep that in my decision
Sure,
from a
sure.
safety standpoint, you know, so, but if by chance, winter gets mild all of a sudden, we would be buying it right now.
Gaylord's had all week off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're,
Yeah,
Leelanau
there are places
County-
that have-
10 days.
Leelanau County was off a lot
couple
that,
more as well.
that
I know,
Mansalona
Mansalona and Kalkaska.
Yeah.
It was rough up there.
Uh-huh.
so that could come into play if there was legislation, that has happened in the past, you know, so, we'll see, but.
Okay, let's see, yeah, I think this last one's just a standing item for upcoming district purchases.
Yep, so there's a lot on here. I always just like to make sure you're aware of what's coming, so if you have questions before we get too far along in a project. Everything above the blue line is coming in the next month. A lot of it we just reviewed, so that'll come off. But we try to do the first 3 months on the top line and then anything after that on the bottom line. And you'll see obviously some TBDs because we don't have enough information for some of the stuff that's more a little bit later in the year. But just so you know what we're aware of and what we'll be bringing to the board, so if there's any questions early on.
Any questions on that?
Nope.
Alright, any other items for the committee this morning? If not, our next scheduled meeting is Thursday, February 27th at 8:15.